This video is about how to solve proportions. A proportion is really just one ratio set up to compare to another. So if we have a ratio, remember a ratio compares two things like 4 puppies to 5 kittens. This is a ratio. A proportion is this ratio set equal to an equivalent ratio. Now, sometimes a proportion will have the numbers already filled in. Sometimes it will have one of them. For example, if we keep the same ratio of puppies to kittens, and you know that you have 25 kittens, how many puppies will you have? The way that we solve a proportion is we look for something called a scale factor. A scale factor is a number that you can use to multiply or divide the ratio that you have in order to find the missing piece of your equivalent ratio. For example, I might look for a scale factor between 5 and 25. Now, I like to draw my ratios and my scale factors with an arrow. The arrow always needs to be pointing in the direction of your unknown quantity. So we'll see later, this could be pointing to the right, it could be pointing to the left, up, down, whatever it is, your arrow always needs to be pointing to the thing that you're trying to find. So then I would take a look at the two numbers, 5 and 25 here. Well, if I'm starting with 5, that means I'm starting with a smaller number, so I'm probably going to be multiplying. 5 times what number equals 25? Oh, 5 times 5. Now this is the exact same thing as finding an equivalent fraction. If you're going to be multiplying by a scale factor of times 5 in your bottom part of your proportion, notice I'm not calling it the denominator because it's not exactly a fraction, it's a ratio. But if you're going to be multiplying by 5 with your kittens, then you also need to multiply by 5 with your puppies. 4 times 5 is 20. So my answer is going to be 20. It's really important that you do not leave it and circle your answer like that, because your answer is not 20 25ths. It is 20 puppies. So I like to write it off to the side, and always, Miss Douglas always likes her units, always include what it is you're talking about. All right, let's look at a few more examples. In this example here, we're comparing these blue triangles to red circles. Notice how I do not always need to have my unknown quantity on the right-hand side. Here, my unknown quantity is on the left. So I'm going to look for a relationship. Well, I don't really see a relationship between 7 and 2.5, but I do see a relationship between 7 and 21. Always going towards my unknown quantity. I'm going to put my arrow going to the left this time, and I need to think about my relationship. 7 to 21, I'm going to multiply 7 times 3 and 2.5 times 3. 2.5 times 3 is going to be 7.5, which would be my answer right here, and then I would write it off to the side. 7.5, include your units, red circles. Let's look at another one. Here's another example. This one does not include units. Some of the ones you see in basic skills problems might not include units, and notice that it's also an x. A variable can be in your proportion to represent your unknown quantity. Looking side to side, scaling horizontally, I do not see a relationship between 3 and 11. However, I do see a relationship between 15 and 3. Always going in the direction of my unknown. 3 to 15, I need to multiply times 5, which would mean that x equals 55. If I don't have any units to include, and it's not like 55 puppies, then I like to include that X equals to let the person grading my work know I know that that variable really represents the number 55. Let's be really, really clear. X does not equal 55 over 11. That is not true. I am just solving for that X, not for that ratio. This would be incorrect. X equals 55, just that. Here's the last example we'll look at for this video. If I have 27 to 9 equals 3 to some unknown quantity. This one actually, I see a relationship between 27 and 3. I also see a relationship between 27 and 9. You can choose either one, and then if you want to, you can go back and check going the other way. If you picked horizontally, you can check the vertical and see if you get the same thing. I like to look for vertical relationships, so I'm going to look at the relationship between 27 and 9. Starting with a larger number, going to a smaller number, I know that means that I'm going to have to divide. 27 divided by 3 equals 9. So coming to the side of my proportion with the unknown quantity, 3 divided by 3, my answer is that X equals 1. I can then go double check it by going to look at my vertical scaling. Well, 27 to 3, I have to divide by 9. 9 divided by 9, X should equal 1. Yep, that's what I said. That just makes me doubly confident in my answer. Not every proportion you'll be able to scale both ways, but it's a nice way to just go check. And that concludes our video on solving proportions.